The American battle between South Florida and number 14 Cincinnati. He's Mark Adams. I'm Jay Alter. This Bearcats team, Mark, on a 7-game winning streak, trying to extend it to 8 on the road against a winless South Florida team in conference play. Go to the interior early, and it pays off. Kyle Washington, the senior, first basket of the game.
Yeah, Kyle Washington along with Gary Clark going to be a very difficult matchup with the Bulls of South Florida. Cincinnati taking advantage early in the paint.
Brian Gregory, first-year head coach for South Florida. And we welcome those who just watched Texas and Oklahoma State. South Florida getting a much-needed 3 early from Stefan Jiggets. Number 14 Cincinnati team on a 7-game winning streak. Go to Cumberland. He hits. Jaron Cumberland, the sophomore, coming off an all-freshman team in the American Conference a year ago, and there has been no sophomore slump there.
And Cincinnati's really going to try to speed up the pace, going some full-court pressure. They want to force South Florida into 94-foot situations.
You know, the Bulls 7-10, 0-4 in American play under first-year head coach Brian Gregory. And he had to bring in 10 different players to this roster, all playing for South Florida in their first year here.
And it's a real mix and match roster. It's a roster where a lot of guys are playing different positions than maybe they played earlier in their careers.
One of those guys, Stefan Jiggets, coming from Fairleigh Dickinson. And a nice shot there, Malik Martin. South Florida 2 for 2 out of the gate here at home.
You know, South Florida, when they played against Wichita State at Wichita State, which happens to a lot of people, by the way, never got into an offensive rhythm. Wichita State's defense was stifling against South Florida.
Washington tries a 3, can't connect. Offensive rebound, that's what Cincinnati makes their money with on the inside. Jennifer a 3, no good. Another offensive board. Third time's a charm, fighting for it. And the Serbian Nikola Štekić pulls it down for South Florida.
But if that goes on all night, this is going to be a blowout.
Trying to finish off defensive possessions and not let this Bearcats team get second chance points. The freshman Justin Brown, great take, and it goes in. Washington got a piece of it, doesn't matter for the freshman Justin Brown.
Let's see if Cincinnati goes inside out again. This time I'd look for Gary Clark down low, number 11 in black for Cincinnati. Does everything for this team, along with Jacob Evans, the third, number 1 in black. Watch those two guys.
Trying to get it to Clark. 10 to shoot for the Bearcats. Cumberland can't hit it. Another offensive rebound. That's already 3 early for Cincinnati. Jennifer on the drive. He'll head to the line for 2. Mick Cronin in year number 12 with the Cincinnati Bearcats. One of 6 head coaches who's been to the NCAA tournament for the last 7 seasons. What he has done at Cincinnati, absolutely incredible.
And for those South Florida fans, remember, Cincinnati, once upon a time when Mick Cronin first came back to his hometown, only won 11 games in his first season. Now, Brian Gregory trying to rebuild South Florida basically in the image of Mick Cronin in Cincinnati.
And Mick Cronin joked with us earlier. He goes, I didn't have the 5th-year players 12 years ago when I was trying to put together a roster from nothing. Brian Gregory's got a roster loaded with those grad transfers. But he can understand, as all head coaches and fans, the growing pains that Brian Gregory and this South Florida team are going through in year 1.
Former assistant under Tom Izzo at Michigan State did a great job with the Dayton Flyers, helped continue the storied program in Dayton, Ohio, and then of course at Georgia Tech. Had some good teams at Georgia Tech as well.
Terrence Samuel fouled on his way to the hole. You love the energy from Brian Gregory. He knows what rebuilding is all about. Stops at Dayton and then recently Georgia Tech, and now starting over here in Tampa with South Florida.
He's got that grinder mentality. It's one step at a time. Build your house one brick at a time. He's the perfect fit for the total rebuild of this program, and that's what it is right now. It's a total rebuild.
Terrence Samuel, grad transfer from Penn State. Graduated in just 3 years with the Nittany Lions. A great defender, described as a glue guy. But he's needed to step up his production on the offensive end. Something he didn't have to do when he played at Penn State.
Now, he is the heart and soul of this basketball team. When I watch this team play, he plays so hard regardless of score, regardless of circumstance, that time with the steal.
Right on cue, makes 2 foul shots, gets back and causes the steal. Jiggett's pull-up jumper, no good. That's the first miss of the night for the Bulls, who are off to a hot start, and it stays with South Florida. 4-point lead, and they keep the basketball.
Cincinnati's half-court defense has been a little bit soft here in the early going, and South Florida taking full advantage of it.
Samuel, another tough take, this time dishes it out. Brown doesn't roll in. It was halfway down for the freshman. Coast to coast the other way. Kane Broom fouled going to the hole. South Florida showing up early at home. 4-point lead against number 14 in the country. Our Saturday showcase, powered by 5 Hour Energy, brings us to the Sun Dome in Tampa, Florida, where number 14 Cincinnati trails South Florida 10-6. Alongside Mark Adams, I'm Jay Alter. This Cincinnati team, Mark, on a 7-game winning streak, and it's because of their dynamic duo.
The most diverse, productive tandem on the same team in the nation, led by Gary Clark. He has a "you can't stop me" mentality, and he does all the little things necessary to win. And part of that tandem as well, Jacob Evans. Jacob Evans is a guy who believes in himself. He believes he's the best player on this floor right now. And he's a man. He doesn't care about scoring. He cares about winning and doing the little things to win the game. This tandem does so many little things, not just score, not just rebound, but defend, get steals, block shots, make free throws. They're the most productive and diverse tandem on the same team in America.
You said Evans likes to win. He hit a game winner with just a second on the clock on the road to beat Temple last week. Then put up 18 points a couple of days later. That was good to win American Conference Player of the Week last week.
You know, it's interesting talking to Brian Gregory. Yesterday we were going through some late game situations. I said, you need to stop defensively. You know, what are you going to do? And he said, for one thing, we're not going to let Gary Clark catch the basketball. That's number one. You know, I mean, it sounds obvious, but you know, I watched some overtimes today where it didn't look so obvious the teams were trying to do that. There's some pretty good games today, too, by the way.
What a Saturday in this college basketball season.
How about Texas Tech knocking off West Virginia earlier today?
Syracuse and Florida State went to double overtime. On ESPN News right before us, Texas and Oklahoma State was a dandy coming down to the wire.
Keenan Evans hit a huge shot for the Red Raiders and Chris Beard. What a job Chris Beard has done in his second year at Texas Tech. They're legit number 8 in the country going in the game today, knocked off number 2 West Virginia. I loved watching that game.
South Florida trying to keep the upset mentality. Right now a 3-point lead against number 14 Cincinnati. 5 to shoot. South Florida's got to go quickly. Freshman Brown, that's a shot clock violation. Had no idea what was on the timer. The Bearcats, they always hang their hat on the defensive end, don't they?
The Cincinnati Bearcats, they will play you solid for the entire shot clock. Look at the defense right there. Wide stance, active hands. That's good ball pressure right there. That's the kind of ball pressure that makes Cincinnati special.
When you think Mick Cronin in Cincinnati, you think that kind of possession.
Ball pressure, and that's where Cincinnati has made their biggest improvement over the last 3 weeks.
Turnover, that's going to South Florida. Gary Clark lost the handle. 5 minutes into this first half, South Florida executing at a very high rate on both sides of the ball.
very well prepared. Brian Gregory and his staff with Tommy Harrion have a solid game plan, but you've got to be able to execute it. And so far, South Florida's been able to execute. You've got to use a timeout here.
And right on cue, Brian Gregory heard you from across the court here. We'll step aside. South Florida up 3 against the Bearcats. Back in Tampa as our Saturday showcase presented by 5 Hour Energy rolls on. South Florida with a 3-point lead. Bulls looking for their first conference win in American play. 0-4, Cincinnati at the other end of the standings at 3-0. And Mark, what are some of the ingredients you look for in an upset, especially in conference play?
Number one is execution. So far, we are seeing that execution from South Florida. Number two is energy. Who plays the hardest? Who gets after the loose balls? Who wins the 50-50 balls? And then as the game progresses, you start looking for belief. You start looking for how your team carries themselves, how they come back to timeouts. They got their heads up. Are they clapping for each other? Is your bench energized? All those things go into the upset.
We've got a long way to go, but South Florida performing very well early here at home. Cincinnati on the defensive end has forced 2 back-to-back shot clock violations, now trying to bring that into the offensive end.
Now Mick Cronin's going to want to get Jacob Evans III some quality touches. Now he's running the point guard position with Kane Broom playing off the ball. This is where Jacob Evans has had his most growth as a basketball player.
Misses that one. That'll stay with South Florida. All right, we got a great big Monday for you. First one of the season on ESPN, and it's a sonic blockbuster. Marvin Bagley III and Duke battle number 18 Miami. That's at 7. And then right after, must-see showdown in the Big 12, Kansas and West Virginia. Mountaineers won't be number 2 after the loss today, but Bob Huggins has a really good basketball team there in Morgantown.
Kansas with a much-needed win, a difficult win
just
against Kansas State.
Eked it out there at the end. We've had a lot of close games on this Saturday. 8 to shoot. They go to the freshman, David Collins, hard to the hole, draws the foul.
I like David Collins a lot. Now, he's got a good body. This kid's only a freshman right now. He's out of Youngstown, Ohio. He really attacks the glass hard. He played well against Wichita State. He was the one South Florida Bull that I thought really showed up and showed his athletic ability to play.
And he gets his basketball prowess from his mom, all-time leading scorer at Youngstown State. Of course, you mentioned it, that's where he grew up.
She's a Penguin.
I think Mom, back in her day, would take David one-on-one, it'd be a competitive game.
She'd dunk on him.
Hey, getting back on defense, David Collins.
I love that kid. That is a building block you can build on for the next 4 years. David Collins, number 11, from the tough town of Youngstown. And he shows that toughness here in South Florida. Weather's a little better here. It depends on what you want.
Cincinnati fans know what Ohio tough is all about.
Yeah.
Bearcats trailing by 4 early here in Tampa. They go to Jacob Evans.
Collins matched up now with Jacob Evans. That's an interesting matchup.
Kyle Washington, that's a tough shot. It goes off Evans, and South Florida's got the basketball.
Boy, Cincinnati really out of sync early in this game, both offensively and defensively.
Cincinnati has missed their last 6 shots. Credit South Florida, they've come out with the game plan and so far executing, leading by 4. Giveaway, what can Cincinnati do with it?
Brian Gregory wanted an over and back.
It's South Florida with a response. Gets the ball right back from Kane Broom. Let's take a look at that over and back.
Let's take a look at this steal. He never crossed.
No.
That's the right call.
Now, South Florida, despite the 4-point lead 7 minutes into this game, they've struggled with the full court pressure of Cincinnati.
That's the problem when you play Cincinnati and Wichita State, because physically they can wear you down. How long can Jiggets face this pressure, keep his concentration, and not turn it over against this fingertip to fingertip wingspan defense of the Cincinnati Bearcats? That's the big question tonight.
Peyton Banks back out onto the floor. He's missed 3 out of the last 4 games with an illness. He's the leading scorer for this South Florida team, and boy, they have really missed him. So it's good to see him back out onto the court. He's finally healthy after about 2.5 weeks. And it's not just his scoring, but the rebounding and the leadership he gives this team. It's been really missed, said head coach Brian Gregory.
He really forced that last shot. You can tell he was anxious to get out here because that was an awful shot. He forced it.
He's been waiting 2.5 weeks to take it.
Yep. That's a walk.
That's a travel. Keith Williams, the freshman.
So Peyton Banks needs to get into the flow. There you see 0-3 record without Banks. There's his field goal percentage numbers and his three-point shooting numbers, which are a little bit pedestrian. But he's a guy that they can go to. He's got size on his side where he can look over smaller defenders and make shots. But he's got to let the game come to him now.
And Banks tried to force his way back, played 10 minutes against East Carolina last week. Just was not in rhythm, still feeling ill, but tried to come back. That's why he's missed only 3 of the last 4 and not the last 4. David Collins, and 1. Hoop in the harm for the freshman. What a performance it's been so far from the Ohio native.
David, that's how your mom, Dorothy, did it as the all-time leading scorer of the Youngstown State Penguins. This kid's averaged over 8.6 points a game over the last 5, and he's shot 52% from the floor. He is blossoming under Brian Gregory.
Now a 6-point lead for South Florida. How does the number 14 team in the country respond on the road? Keith Williams, that's a tough take. Another offensive rebound, that's the 4th for the Bearcats tonight. Going inside, using the window for 2, Nasir Brooks.
There's going to be waves of defensive bodies going full court defense for Cincinnati all night long. They want to speed South Florida up.
Collins confident on the dribble to break that press though. 15 to shoot for South Florida. Here's Peyton Banks. Jiggets a 3, no good.
That was right in rhythm too. Good pass by Banks.
In transition, Evans pulls the trigger, doesn't connect. Whoa, went for the home run ball, looking for Tulio da Silva. Wasn't there on the other end. Almost midway through this first half, South Florida in the driver's seat. South Florida leading 13-9 against number 14 Cincinnati, and the Bearcats doing very well this season. A 7-game winning streak. He's Mark Adams, I'm Jay Alter, and Mark, the Bearcats have gotten to number 14 in the nation because of what they do on the defensive end.
They're like a boa constrictor defensively. They squeeze the life out of you. Their numbers are impressive nationally, as this is a team that can lock you down. They hold you to a low point total. They do a great job of defensive field goal percentage, allowing nearly 37%. That's a stellar number. Their scoring margin for the season, plus 20, and plus 9.4 rebounds per game. The only other American team that mirrors those kinds of numbers is Wichita State. That's going to be quite a battle on February 18th on ESPN. Those are the 2 best defensive teams in the conference and 2 of the great teams in the country, possibly Final Four teams.
Both teams in the top 15 right now. But you mentioned the Cincinnati defense. Right now, South Florida is shooting 4 of 8, 50%. That's why the Bulls have a 4-point lead. Bearcats, 3 of 11 from the floor. Go to the senior Gary Clark inside, double team, passes out of it. Bearcats trying to find their offensive flow here on the road. 5 to shoot.
Walked.
Lefty hook and a travel first.
But I like the look from Cincinnati. I like them getting the ball down low. They've been effective, and now Kyle Washington comes in for Nasir Brooks to give them another score on the block.
5th turnover for Cincinnati already in this first half. South Florida giving the Bearcats everything they can handle. Break the press with De Silva.
Smart play. Smart play by De Silva.
Tulio,
he can play a little haphazard sometimes. That time, pulled it out, make Cincinnati play some half-court defense.
Banks connects on a 3. Peyton Banks, the grad transfer from Penn State, and boy, that must feel good after missing 2.5 weeks with an illness. He's back in his stroke, showing off.
That play by De Silva will not show up in the box score, but he deserves credit for that 3 for his first decision offensively.
Gary Clark trying to answer but can't connect. 7-point lead for South Florida, more than halfway gone in this first half. David Collins, the freshman, called for a carry. So that's now the 5th turnover for South Florida. 10 turnovers in just about 10 minutes for these two teams.
You know, I don't like Cincinnati's body language right now. Early in this game, they seem frustrated. This is typically where a guy like Jacob Evans and Gary Clark take over the game and show leadership. There's Evans with the ball right now.
On the drive, no good. He missed the layup, but that goes off Collins. It'll give the Bearcats another opportunity. What can Cincinnati do to get going offensively? They just have lacked that rhythm in this game.
Pick up their intensity defensively. I mean, they've got it. When they're at their best, Cincinnati scores points off of their tough, hard-nosed defense. And there you see the frustration right there from Kyle Washington. This is a team right now that's relying on their offense, but this is a team that is steeped in defensive tradition. Good job of moving his feet. Again, that's De Silva making a good, solid defensive play. Collins wraps up Kyle Washington.
It's been 2.5 minutes since Cincinnati scored a basket, 1 for their last 11. It's now 6 turnovers for the Bearcats as well. Trouble for the number 14 team in the nation early against South Florida, a team that's looking for their first win in this conference.
Cincinnati is not pressuring the ball the way they typically do. And usually they are right in you. A little bit soft, a little better right there by Moore.
Collins,
there's the
it's
pressure.
A triple team. Somehow gets the ball out of there. Banks with a hand in his face. Doesn't matter. Peyton Banks, 2 for 2 from deep. Timeout Cincinnati. South Florida up 10.
So how do you pull an upset? You execute. And Peyton Banks, who hasn't played over the last couple of weeks now, back in the lineup, they're giving him the basketball. How do you pull the upset? You bring energy. And right now, South Florida has the energy in the building.
You think they missed number 4?
They missed him a lot. They missed him a lot. He's a guy that can make shots over smaller defenders, and he's got long range.
All right, we'll have an NBA Sunday special for you on ESPN, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. Trailblazers against a red-hot Timberwolves team. And as always, you can catch it on the ESPN app as well. Jimmy Butler would be proud of the way Peyton Banks is playing right now. That's a tough shot that he just made.
And when Banks makes those shots, you saw the reaction from South Florida. Do you think they have belief right now?
Everybody on that bench is bought in on first-year head coach Brian Gregory.
That's the third critical factor. Right now, this team has belief.
A 10-point lead. Call off the ball against the freshman David Collins.
You know, having turned around a program or two along the way, you always want that one signature win that you can build on for the next season.
Oh, this would be it. A big statement with the number 14 team in the country in your house.
I have a feeling Cincinnati is going to answer.
Gary Clark
down low. There's leadership right there.
Big time post move from the senior.
Here comes the pressure now.
His first basket of the game. It took nearly 12 minutes for the second leading scorer of Cincinnati to get his first points.
Let's see if they can speed South Florida up now with their on-ball pressure.
Go right back to the hot hand, Banks, who hits again. The trailing Clark can't get an answer. Offensive rebound, foul underneath. Kyle Washington going up strong. He's at the line when we get back. South Florida up by 10.
ESPN's exclusive presentation of college basketball is presented by 5-Hour Energy Shots. Get back to 100%.
You're watching the American Conference on ESPN. We've got a great one so far in Tampa. South Florida giving Cincinnati everything the Bearcats can handle. It's a 10-point lead for the South Florida Bulls, 21-11 in this first half. He's Mark Adams, I'm Jay Alter. Mark, what has impressed you most about the way South Florida has come out and executed tonight?
I think the composure against the full court pressure of Cincinnati. I think Stephon Jiggets has been really good at handling pressure, and he's gotten help from Samuel. He's gotten certainly a lot of help on the offensive end from Peyton Banks, knocking down shots from 2-point range, 3-point range, and 4-point range. That's how deep he was on the one.
Cincinnati trying to come back with their senior leadership. Kyle Washington, a senior for the Bearcats, with 2 at the line. Full court pressure, as we've seen all game from Cincinnati. And for the most part, it's been like that. South Florida has handled it well.
Yeah, South Florida with 5 turnovers in the first half. Cincinnati was 6.
Not many would have predicted that coming into this game. 10 to shoot for the Bulls. Here's Terrence Samuel. Thought about pulling up, now does. That's an air ball. Jared Cumberland out in a hurry for the Bearcats.
Well, really good job of defensive transition by South Florida.
Clark back down, leaves it short on the rim. Second effort from Gary Clark. Jacob Evans hits on a 3.
That's an example of the little things and the diversity of a Gary Clark. Gets the ball down low, doesn't make the shot, gets an offensive rebound, all of a sudden ball goes A to B, and his other diverse, talented teammate, Jacob Evans, knocks down the 3 ball. That's the diversity of those two, and productivity.
Leading scorer for the Bearcats, reigning American Conference Player of the Week, and it took him 13 minutes and change to make his first basket in this game. 2 to shoot. South Florida's got to fire it up, and it goes! Isaiah Manderson with nothing on the shot clock, fading away and knocks it down.
Let's see if Cincinnati can answer with their diverse tandem. There's Gary Clark. There's Jacob Evans on the backside.
Fouled. Kyle Washington heads back to the foul line.
Watch what Gary Clark does here. He's physical, but not too physical. Goes up strong, doesn't complete it. But look how quick he is off his feet. And then he takes care of the basketball against the double team, gets it out, and his biodiversity tandem partner, and Jacob Evans, the third, knocks down the 3. Look at Manderson fading away, shot clock at 0. That's when you know it's going really good.
Wow. South Florida tonight shooting 8 of 13 from the floor, better than 60%. Cincinnati shooting under 30%. Washington back to the foul line. 67% on the year.
When you play a team like Cincinnati, your goal as far as your game plan goes, don't let them explode offensively. Don't give them any reason for momentum. Take care of the basketball, and that was the biggest thing that Brian Gregory was concerned about. And South Florida has done exactly that. They've taken care of the ball.
Bulls have to feel really good 14 minutes into this game. A 5-point lead against the number 14 team in the country.
You could feel Cincinnati turning up the defensive heat, though. The boa constrictor is starting to constrict.
Samuel, tough take, and it falls. Terrence Samuel scooped to the hoop to put the Bulls back up by 7.
Really good explosive move. God-awful defense on the ball.
The boa constrictor loosened up.
Yes, lost its grip.
Evans pump fake, finds Cumberland, open 3,
Boom.
It's good. Jaron Cumberland.
Starting to get the rhythm a little bit.
Pulls the Bearcats within 4. Must feel good just to see a couple of threes finally go in after they started this game 0 for 3 from deep.
Yeah, you can see Cincinnati start to compete.
Monk, a lot of contact, nothing called.
These are the turnovers that lead to baskets. Smart play.
Feet check on Cumberland, but he missed it. Jiggets with a full head of steam, uses the window for 2. Stefan Jiggets in transition. And a foul called in transition.
Watch Kane Broom. See how he reaches? Off balance, Samuel goes right by him. When you're defending on the ball like that, when you reach, you better be balanced. Otherwise, a good athletic player like Samuel is going to expose you.
And then getting back in transition, Mark, are you okay with the foul there? Foul better than a freebie going the other way?
Well, there were 4 white jerseys back, so I don't like the foul at all in that situation.
Well, it
sends, let's give Kane Broom a lot of credit for drawing that foul.
Right. Sends Cincinnati to the line, 1-1. Now the Bulls have entered the bonus. Broom would transfer from Sacred Heart. He's a great addition to the guard spot for this Bearcats team that believe they've got a roster to make a deep run.
Jay, for Cincinnati to be elite, and I mean Final Four national championship like elite, Kane Broom has to play at his highest level. He's got to improve. Now, he had an injury recently. He sat out for a while. There you see Mick Cronin schooling his point guard a little bit about that defensive play. You can't reach in that situation. And he's good enough, by the way. He's good enough. That's not wishful thinking. He could be special.
Tulio Da Silva trying to organize his South Florida offense. A little more than 4 minutes to go in the first half, and right now an upset on the cards for the Bulls. Stefan Jiggets swatted away. Kyle Washington says, get that out of here.
Now think about that matchup. You got Stefan Jiggets matched up with Kyle Washington, the point guard versus a big. Now remember, the last dribble penetration against Cincinnati, look how Kyle Washington stays in the stance, doesn't go for the steal, and just uses his length. 4
seconds on the shot clock. South Florida's got to work quickly. Tulio Da Silva, like a wide receiver, bobbling it, trying to keep his feet in bounds, and he turns it over.
But if you're Brian Gregory, that's not a bad turnover because the ball went out of bounds. It doesn't give Cincinnati an opportunity to move in transition. If there is such thing as a good turnover, by the way. Gary Clark drawing a lot of attention.
Barking orders at his team. The double team comes. Kick out Evans. No good.
Look at Clark.
Fighting for that offensive board, and a foul called. South Florida putting number 14 Cincinnati on upset alert. Peyton Banks back from an illness. The thermometer red hot.
We got a good one, baby. Call your friends up. 4 teams, 2 conferences, 1 blockbuster night.
High-level college basketball here. What a fun night this is going to be.
Monday on ESPN.
We We've already seen a couple of upsets on this college basketball Saturday. South Florida trying to add to the list. Right now, a 4-point lead against Cincinnati.
Watch what Gary Clark does now. Takes care of the ball, pass it out. Watch number 11. Just watch him go to the offensive glass. Watch him move to the right and then swim to the left. Goes right, with a swim right there. He splits the two defenders, goes up with two hands for the offensive rebound, and gets the stick back. He's fouled on the floor. But great offensive rebounders continue to move, and they use two hands to snatch the basketball.
How about that stat? The Bearcats have 8 offensive rebounds. Mark, they only have 5 defensive rebounds.
And it's 9-0 second chance points. Where would the Bearcats be without those 9 points right now on second chance points?
Really relying on the rebound margin to stay close with South Florida.
Man, is he good.
And
just
the
watch
little
him.
things.
Yeah, that's right. It's the little things that he does.
Thanks to you for pointing it out. That hustle leads to 2 points for Cincinnati, and the Bearcats bring it to a 1-possession game for the first time in about 10 minutes.
That's the other thing about the experience of this team. They will not panic. They may go through a segment where they don't quite look themselves, but they will recover. That's the leadership of Gary Clark and Jacob Evans III.
South Florida shooting 10 of 16 from the floor. Big reason why Cincinnati's only had 5 defensive rebounds. Here's Peyton Banks. This time driving, and the floater goes. Boy, as the transfer from Penn State really made an impact early after missing 3 of the last 4. He's not rusty at all.
I knew he could shoot it. I didn't know he could do that over Kyle Washington. He's really feeling it. Brian Gregory really held him back for a while to make sure he was 100%. He's 100%.
Oh, yeah. It helps that South Florida did not have that midweek game this week.
Right.
Boy, when you go play Wichita State on the road, they should give you a week off to recover.
How about Houston in their midweek game against Tulsa?
Wow.
Rob Gray was
18
tremendous. Now that's coming off the loss at Wichita State. And listen, I know Kelvin Sampson as well as anybody in the country. Worked for him for a couple of years, been friends for a lot of years since 1982. And one thing I know about a Kelvin Sampson coach team, if you get whacked on the road, he's going to have his team doubly prepared the next time out. They're going to respond.
Boy, were they. Right now, as of this morning, hot off the press, Joe Lunardi has Kelvin Sampson's Houston Cougars team as the last 4 in the field.
Now, they learned a valuable lesson at Wichita State, and they learned it well. And kudos to the Cougars for coming out the way they did against Tulsa. That was a massacre. Playing their home games at Texas Southern this year in Houston.
South Florida without a true point guard on the floor, going to the freshman Collins at 6'3". Hand off to Banks. Five to shoot. Swatted away. And that's another shot clock violation. The Cincinnati defense showing up again on a tough stop.
And guess who got the deflection late? Gary Clark.
There's really not enough love you could heap on to number 11, Gary Clark. He's been outstanding.
Top of your screen. Watch him get his arms out. Right there. Look at that. He reaches with his right and flares with his left. That's exactly how you teach
Should be
him.
1 second left on that shot clock. Yep, the officials got it.
Well, you know what Cincinnati's saying? Don't let number 4 have it. Peyton Banks cannot catch this basketball. It looks like he's inbounding anyway. Look for something straight down to the rim to Manderson. There it is.
The lob. Manderson, too much on it, but he got a good look. We've seen him earlier this game make it with the shot clock winding down as well.
Nick Cronin furious. Cincinnati was not ready, not in a defensive stance for that pass.
Great pass. Evans finds the senior. Washington. Hook shot goes. Kyle Washington ties this game at 29. Two minutes left in this first half. And Cincinnati has battled back to make it a tie game at 29.
Here's where I watch Cincinnati closely every game. Under 2 minutes to go in each half, their depth wears you down. This is where they expose you.
Samuel showing off the handles, but it's stripped. Kyle Washington taking 2 men on, and a foul called on the floor. Senior will head to the line.
Depth is the most underrated team talent for success in college basketball or professional basketball for that matter. When you have depth and you can bring waves of fresh bodies, fresh legs, defensive pressure against an opponent that doesn't have as many players, you can just wear them down.
Kyle Washington gives Cincinnati its first lead since it was 4-3 with 18:54 on the first half clock. South Florida's led a lot of this first half, but Cincinnati doing just what they need to do to regain that lead at the end of the first half. And now the full court pressure. South Florida needs to keep composure right before the intermission here.
It's been full court pressure the entire first half.
Foul called, a lot of contact. David Collins went flying. Trevor Moore, a fellow freshman for the Bearcats, called for the foul.
Well, Cincinnati's starting to smell an opportunity here, and Trevor Moore goes right to the line of the basketball, runs into Collins. But I like the aggression there. I've got no problem with that foul. Those are the fouls you want, those aggressive fouls going after a jump ball.
1-1 for David Collins. Our first big Monday of the season on ESPN, a Sonic blockbuster doubleheader. Duke taking on number 18 Miami at 7, and then later number 12 Kansas and number 2 West Virginia, although the Mountaineers will drop down, probably stay inside the top 10 for that
sure.
battle on Monday. 31-31, less than 90 seconds to play in this first half. Boy, has South Florida really come out and impressed here at home. 0-4 in the American Conference. You wouldn't know it from this performance. Giveaway, though. Cincinnati's got the ball back and a fresh shot clock. Timeout, Mick Cronin.
Yeah, Mick Cronin doesn't like that timeout at all. I don't like it either because Moore was not in trouble. He wasn't panicked. He didn't have the ball over his head. It wasn't going to get stolen. He was in a good, aggressive stance with the basketball right there. Mick Cronin talking to his point guard about calling that timeout.
One thing we learned about Mick Cronin today, huge history buff. Even in the middle of college basketball season, reading about North Korea at the moment, and he said his favorite time period, the 1960s. Big reason why, JFK.
He was reading about North Korea today and how families hold themselves accountable both personally and politically. It was an interesting conversation. He loves John F. Kennedy because of the civil rights movement, what John F. Kennedy represented, along with Martin Luther King during the 1960s, which is why he would like to go back and live in the 1960s. I'd love to see him in a paisley shirt and bell bottoms.
Little afro, too?
Absolutely. Let's put an afro on him and maybe a goatee as well. How about that? And you know what? That's because that's what I look like in the 1960s.
The afro?
I had pretty long hair. I did have pretty long hair.
Wow.
You never know it by today's standards, but I mean, not down to my shoulder or anything, but a lot more hair than I have today, that's for sure.
We've got to get our producer, Major Howe, a picture of you in bell bottoms and a goatee.
Oh, I could set you guys up.
31-31, a little more than a minute left until this first half is over. Incredible that it's tied when you consider South Florida shooting nearly 30% better from the floor. Reach-in foul called on Malik Martin. And Kyle Washington's done a great job tonight getting himself to the foul line. He's already been there 6 times tonight, and he's made every shot. 6 for 6 from the senior. Sometimes it takes that. When you're only shooting in the 30s from the floor, just get to the foul line and make it simpler.
Well, Cincinnati, they get to the free throw line. And they've gotten to the free throw line with regularity tonight. Let me give you a quick number.
Give it to me.
Cincinnati, the last 7 games, their opponents have shot a total of 89 free throws over the last 7 games. Do the math on that. Okay, about 10,
Yeah.
12 free throws a game. You know how many they've made? 98.
Really?
Yeah. Opponents have attempted 89 free throws. Cincinnati has made 98.
That's in the running for stat of the year early in 2018. And Kyle Washington stays perfect from the foul line, 8 for 8. Do the Bulls have a response right before this first half comes to a close?
I know who they're going to look for. Peyton Banks, number 4. He's blanketed by Justin Jennifer right now. 4th shot.
Fighting for the offensive board. Martin's got it. Swatted away by Washington. Cincinnati comes up with it. Clark up ahead. Jacob Evans puts it in for an easy 2. Great transition play from the Bearcats.
They take mistakes and turn them into points.
Well, if you can believe it, it's the largest lead of the game for Cincinnati. Last possession of this first half for South Florida. Trying to end on a strong note. Freshman David Collins, great job hanging in the air and closes out the first half with 2. The bench helping South Florida big time, 17 of their 33. You'll be with Chris Conner in the studio when you get back. Get caught up on a crazy college basketball Saturday after these words. Cincinnati up 2. By 5-hour energy, South Florida hanging tough with the number 14 team in the country because of this kid, Peyton Banks.
He came off the bench, 10 points for South Florida. USF has done a great job giving him the basketball, recognizing who their best and hottest offensive player is. And on the Cincinnati side, this diverse tandem really has come up a little short here in the first half, combined for 9 points. Not a great shooting percentage. Gary Clark with 8 rebounds, Jacob Evans with 3 assists. But credit USF with coming out with a great game plan, play half court, breaking full court pressure, and Brian Gregory and the Bulls are right in the middle of this thing.
They led for nearly 16 minutes of that first half. The good news for Cincinnati fans, the Bearcats didn't play particularly well for the first 20 minutes, and yet they control a 2-point lead going into the second half. He's Mark Adams, I'm Jay Alter. We're underway in Tampa. A fresh 20 minutes on the clock. South Florida hanging tough with this number 14 team in the country, Cincinnati. Go right inside to the senior, Gary Clark. He's been the catalyst for the Bearcats. Strong post move and uses the window for 2. Gary Clark urging this team on. That's what a senior's supposed to do.
And Gary Clark doing a much better job of recognizing where the double team can go. He's actually shooing away offensive players on his side of the court to give him space to play.
We were looking at the first half stats at halftime. Cincinnati with 17 of their 37 points from the foul line. Looking for a response, swatted out. Stephon Jiggets going up and grabbing that one, so second chance opportunity for South Florida. Here's the transfer from Fairleigh Dickinson.
I wouldn't think Peyton Banks is going to sit for very long.
Deep 3 from Jiggets does not fall. Let's take another look at that play from Gary Clark.
Watch Gary Clark when he catches the basketball. He's got Cumberland on the same side. Watch what he does. He says, get out of here. Get out of here. So Cumberland vacates the area. That creates space for Gary Clark to go one-on-one on that side. That's recognizing a defense like a quarterback, understanding where the safety is, sending somebody one way, somebody else another way to give yourself some space to get it through the window.
Mark, you said it wouldn't be long until we saw Peyton Banks. He's back out onto the court. He only played 10 minutes in the last 3 weeks battling an illness, and you wouldn't know it based off tonight. Not rusty at all. Jacob Evans, nice pull-up jumper, goes. That's a 6-point lead for the Bearcats now to open up this second half.
That's what I mean when I say he plays like a man. Right there, under control, gets to 14 feet, great looking jump shot.
So the Bearcats used the foul line in the first half. Now coming out and finding the offensive rhythm in open floor play. Turnaround jumper falls for Stefan Jiggets.
He's a good player. Coming out of Fairleigh Dickinson to play at this level against Cincinnati the way that he has, he's a good player.
Bearcats go right back to Gary Clark. His dynamic duo partner Jacob Evans. This time Evans keeps it himself and draws the foul. Well, it took a little while, but your dynamic duo that you told us before the game is really showing up to start this second half.
And we're seeing the diversity of their game. We saw Gary Clark, who recognized a situation, sent Cumberland away to give him space to work. We've seen Jacob Evans III now come off the dribble, knock down the jump shot, get in the paint, draw a free throw opportunity. In Cincinnati, they are so good at getting to the free throw line and not allowing the opponents to get there. Here's the only 3 players in the country with these stat lines of over 12 points, over 48, over 37 from 3. And look at the rebounds, blocks, steals, and assists. Only 3 players in America are that diverse. Michael Bridges from Villanova.
To be in company with Bridges. I mean, he's a player that is in the lottery on a lot of NBA draft boards. And to have 2 players on the same team be in that company, outstanding.
Yeah, thanks to ESPN Stats, because we sent them a lot of information. They got back to us right away because we wanted to know, is this the most diverse tandem on the same team in the country for all the things they do?
And it turns out it is.
It is.
South Florida now trailing by 6 after leading for much of this game. 5 to shoot. Stefan Jiggets. Deep 3. No good. Off the mark. Justin Jennifer in
Great
transition.
pass.
Underneath. Clark. The finish rims out. Was a really good look underneath, though. Foul called off the ball. They'll tag the senior Kyle Washington for it. That pass was so good, Mark, it almost should go down as an assist, even though they didn't get the finish.
And it was right in front of us. He had a very small window to complete that pass, but Cumberland, with really good eyesight, really good judgment, to thread it through to Gary Clark.
Cincinnati has really upped the intensity coming out of halftime as well, carrying over from the strong finish at the end of the first half.
They're at their best in their half-court defense when they are in a stance and communicate well. And I don't think they communicated nearly as well as I've seen them in the past in the first half, but they are down a stance this half, and they are communicating, talking. They switch on everything. They force you to make plays. Great defense.
Just ripped right away. Throw down, Jaron Cumberland.
Brian Gregory's got to watch this really close now.
Largest lead of the game for Cincinnati. Bearcats finally showing why they're a top 15 team in the nation.
Yep.
8-2 run for the Bearcats, and Brian Gregory takes a timeout. We'll take it with him. Mick Cronin, Cincinnati, starting the roll in Tampa. Look around the nation at what was a crazy day in college basketball, a super Saturday. Coach K not on the bench though. And Trey Young just keeps making history for Oklahoma, Mark. 43 points in a win against TCU today, and then the upsets continue.
And Andrew Jones at Texas, we send you our best. Your sister went through cancer,
leukemia,
right?
Yes.
Leukemia.
2.5
My
year
niece
battle.
right now is in her 4th session of chemotherapy for acute myeloid leukemia. So Andrew Jones, we are with you. All of us at ESPN, every college basketball fan across the country, we are with you in this fight along with my niece and your sister.
So many families across the country can relate to Andrew Jones' story, and everybody sending their thoughts and prayers to Texas. Back to basketball. Cincinnati again using that defense to suffocate South Florida. You used the example of a boa constrictor earlier, and That grip is starting to tighten here in the second half. Now an 8-point lead for the number 14 team in the country.
Cincinnati used 11 players in the first half, and they keep bringing fresh bodies to squeeze a little bit harder.
Jaron Cumberland into the paint. Great second effort. Doesn't fall down though. Kyle Washington underneath. That doesn't go.
Samuel has been really quiet here in the second half. In the first half, he made some athletic plays, drove to the basket. I'd like to see him a little bit more aggressive with the basketball. There he is, number 2.
One of 2 Penn State grad transfers on this South Florida Bulls roster, alongside Peyton Banks. Samuel steps into one and hits.
Right on cue.
Terrence Samuel bringing South Florida on back within 5. So Samuel with 7, Peyton Banks with 10. So the Nittany Lion Alumni Foundation has put in 17 points of this 38 for the Bulls. And both are alums. They both got their degrees from Penn State.
That's what I like to hear.
One on the shot clock. Cincinnati doesn't recognize it. Jennifer tried to get that up. Cincinnati leading by 5, and whoa, Nelly. Thoughts and prayers with the Jackson family as the entire country mourns an iconic broadcaster in this industry. We say goodbye to Keith Jackson today. We've got a good one in Tampa. South Florida hanging tough with Cincinnati, and Rick Pitino, one of many fans in the crowd tonight, enjoying a good American Conference battle. These two teams, they put on a show, Mark Adams. And credit South Florida, winless in conference play, hanging tough with the number 14 team in the nation.
And Peyton Banks was the real story in the first half as he takes the ball out of bounds. Number 4 in white was on fire. Now his former Penn State teammate, Samuel. Both those guys have been good.
And you talk about guys being good. The freshman David Collins, who controls the ball, he's got 7 points on 2 of 2 shooting.
This is great experience for this freshman to run the point, run the team, gain leadership respect at that position.
Knocked out of bounds, 6 seconds left on the shot clock. And he's getting guarded by one of the toughest defenders in the nation, the junior Jacob Evans, who's 6'6", so a 3-inch height advantage. And the freshman, he has been fearless so far with that assignment.
And that, again, is some of the diversity that Jacob Evans brings to the table as a defender. He's one of the leaders on this team in steals.
3 to shoot. Collins fires it up. No good. Evans hauls down the rebound. Cincinnati 5-point lead. 14 minutes left.
Great entry pass.
Foul called underneath. Goes against Isaiah Manderson. His second foul.
Well, Jaron Cumberland has really improved his ability to recognize low post opportunities and get the basketball in a space where a big guy wants it. That time it was Nasir Brooks.
Underneath, Clark hacked. Gary Clark heads to the line. Boy, has he been a senior staple for this Cincinnati team. Really, since arriving to campus in his freshman year, he started all but 2 games in his Bearcat career.
And on that out-of-bounds play, guess who passed it in?
Evans.
Jacob Evans.
Yeah, that's your dynamic duo.
You know, that's also when you've got guys like that, out-of-bounds passers like that. I mean, do the math. There's 5 defenders and only 4 offensive players in bounds. You've got to have a guy that makes really good decisions throwing the ball in bounds. It's an underrated part of the game.
Full court pressure comes right on back after 2 made foul shots. Interesting to have Peyton Banks bring the ball up when you've got Jiggets and Collins on the floor. Not your traditional point guard or ball handler at 6'6", the shooting guard.
Part of that is because Cincinnati, they'll deny the basketball to ball handlers, and they like to give other guys an opportunity to make them bring it up.
Great feed inside. Manderson didn't get a great look there. And a jump ball. Great hustle from both teams fighting for that one. Possession arrow stays with South Florida.
Watch Isaiah Manderson. Now remember Gary Clark when he catches the ball, how decisive he is? Look at Manderson. Total indecision, and he's walking as well. He just drug his pivot foot about 2 feet and it wasn't called. But he's just he's standing there waiting for something to happen versus making something happen, being in an athletic stance and making a play.
Great pass though.
Yeah, it's a good pass out after he walked.
All right, South Florida's got a fresh shot clock. I was talking about from Jiggets inside.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Foul called. Reach in from Justin Jennifer.
I like you. You're a good dude.
I appreciate it.
Your
I like you
parents should be
too.
proud of you. Your parents should be very proud
I
of
hope
you.
they are.
I'm sure they are.
All right, 7-point game as Mark Adams taking this broadcast off the rails where it probably should have been from the first half. Peyton Banks fires in a three. That's his third triple of the night. Keeping South Florida in it with the number 14 team in the country, Cumberland. There's your answer. Jaron Cumberland, the sophomore, delivers for the Bearcats.
Best offensive possession for Cincinnati all night long.
10 points for the sophomore. 4 of 7 from the floor. Now does South Florida have a counter punch to throw at this heavyweight?
Well, the counter punching has been Peyton Banks.
They go inside. Malik Martin fade away, way too short.
Not crazy about that shot.
Evans, nobody home. That's as easy a basket you'll find for the junior Jacob Evans.
Cincinnati's starting to hit on all cylinders now.
Showing why they are a top 15 team in the nation. Took a little while, but now the wheels are in motion. Blocked, swatted underneath. Jacob Evans, he's 3 points away from 1,000. That's an easy one though. Bearcats up by 9. American Conference action, Cincinnati in South Florida, all part of our Saturday showcase presented by 5 Hour Energy. And you love the spacing on this play, Mark.
Look how this ball rotates from one side of the floor, from left to right, bottom of the screen. I like what South Florida defense does. It runs Jacob Evans off the line. So what does he do? He reverses the ball to the opposite side to a wide open Jaron Cumberland, who knocks down the 3 ball. That's great spacing, great unselfish play, and really good tempo by Cincinnati.
Cumberland's got 10. That would have been an easy 2 points, but it's called back for a hold.
Cincinnati in foul number 11, Gary Clark, his first.
Foul called against Gary Clark, his first foul of the night. He's Mark Adams, I'm Jay Alter. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday evening. Cincinnati getting tested by South Florida, but now comfortable with about 12 minutes left in this game, 9-point lead. How have they been able to go from down by 10 to up by 9? It didn't happen quickly, but slowly but surely they've commanded this game back.
Defensively, they got their mojo back. They didn't pressure the ball as well or communicate as well defensively early in the first half, about the first 10 minutes. And then they started doing a better job in their full court pressure, which gave them some confidence and some momentum and rhythm offensively as well. Cincinnati, as much as anybody in the country, develops offense off of defense, not just from the way that they force turnovers, but also attitudinally on the offensive end.
Great block underneath. Take another look at that. All ball from Nasir Brooks, the sophomore at 6'11" out of Philadelphia. 5 seconds still left on the shot clock for South Florida. Trying to stay in it. They go to Peyton Banks. He's had the hot hand. Drives in. Everything going down for Peyton Banks tonight.
That is a tough shot.
Jared Cumberland has had the answer for Cincinnati tonight. His third three, and it gives the Bearcats a 10-point lead. Leading all scorers with 13 points, Cumberland. You were talking about that Cincinnati defense. Not only are they some of the best in the American, best in the country.
Look at that. Two of the top three defensive teams in the country by points given up is Cincinnati and UCF. This is a nitty-gritty, defensive-oriented conference that you better bring your lunch pail, your work boots, and leave your ego on hold and not get discouraged easily.
Virginia, the leader, only 53 points a game.
They're also holding opponents. Michigan State, for example, holding their opponents to 34% on the season. Lost today to Michigan, by the way.
Second chance points, that's been the name of the game for Cincinnati. Brooks fouled, and he'll head to the line.
Ball foul number 1, Isaiah Anderson. That's his third, team 6.
You know, points allowed, the number 7 team in the country is SMU. 3 out of the top 7 teams in America holding opponents to 61 or less is Cincinnati, UCF, and SMU.
And Wichita State's not even in that group.
Now, Wichita State out-rebounds their opponent by over 10 per game. That's number 4 in America. And they hold their opponents under 39% on the season.
Cincinnati has had 10, count them, 10 offensive rebounds in this game. Big reason why they've got this lead back in command of this basketball game.
And second chance points, they're up 11-3 over South Florida.
That'll do it. Largest lead of the night for the Bearcats, 12, 55-43. Bulls led for 16 minutes in the first half, and Cincinnati, since taking the lead at halftime, has really not looked back.
Well, Mick Cronin constantly imploring his defense, pressure the ball, get into the ball. Well, nothing. There's denying leads. USF can't get into their offense.
Banks, tough shot, doesn't matter. Peyton Banks now shooting 7 of 8 from the floor, 18 points to lead all scorers. Wow.
You're right. They don't need to run an offense.
No.
Just give it to Peyton Banks, let him make a play.
Banks missed 3 out of the last 4 games, only played 10 minutes against East Carolina, battling an illness that took 3 weeks to get over. You'd think he'd be a little rusty, not at all.
Look at Peyton Banks. He's just jumping over guys and making shots.
Number 5, Trevor Moore checks in for Cincinnati.
4 for 4 from deep. Number 4 has been all that tonight and more for South Florida.
You know how much I love Twitter.
Yeah, you're all over it.
I love Twitter, and I love my followers, but I have the best followers in college basketball. And one of my followers, Doug Smith, sent to me that between Banks, Jiggets, and Samuel, all those guys are familiar with Cincinnati at Penn State and Fairleigh Dickinson. They played them last year.
Both teams lost. Underneath, tough finish, doesn't fall for Tulio Da Silva. He's been really quiet tonight.
Great catch.
Foul. Trayvon Scott is a third against Peyton Banks. It was a great pass by Kane Broom to set it all up.
Trayvon Scott is shooting 71% on the season. You love guys who come off the bench and understand their roles. For Scott, it's to be athletic, an energy guy, a rebounder, an offensive putback. Catch a ball that's tough to catch like in that full court situation and make a play. He fills his role extremely well for Cincinnati. We saw Rick Pitino in the stands earlier. When he was coaching at Louisville, I asked him, what's the key to winning NCAA tournament games? What's the key where I felt at times that Rick Pitino would lose games in November that maybe they should win, but they'd win games in March that I wasn't sure they could win? He said depth. He said 8 through 13. Those are the guys you've got to prepare, because those are the guys who are going to make a play in the quarterfinals, the semifinals, the round of 16 in the NCAA tournament to lead you that way. Trayvon Scott is one of those guys that could do that for Cincinnati.
They go right back to Banks. Why would you do anything differently? He's been fantastic tonight. Lost the handle there in a jump ball. Arrow with the Bearcats, so Cincinnati takes over on possession. Cincinnati shooting 24 of 27 from the foul line. Nothing you can do, Brian Gregory, when you have a team get to the line that normally shoots around 66%.
Yeah.
Shoot that well.
We mentioned the first half. They had given up 89 free throws in the previous 7 games Cincinnati had. And they had scored it 97 times of their own. They had made 97 free throws. You know, Brian Gregory, we talked to him yesterday and today and said, what's one thing about you no one knows? He attended the Dan Gable wrestling camp in elementary school and absolutely got pummeled.
Yeah.
But it worked out because he goes to Naval Academy, and his first year as a plebe at the Naval Academy, you can click out of a class. That means basically you can test through a class. So he goes to his PE class, which is wrestling on the first day. They line him up and say, who's wrestled before? And Brian Gregory, of course, raised his hand. He wrestled in elementary school. He goes out on the wrestling mat, shows a couple moves on a dude.
Boom, you're out.
He flips out of some kind of a hold. I don't know if it was a chicken wing or what it was. And they say, okay, you're out of here. So he got his credit, got out of the wrestling class. How good is that?
As good as it gets.
Can you see Brian Gregory? I don't know what they call those wrestling uniforms. What do they call those things?
The singlet.
The singlet.
Yeah.
In grade school, you know, it's like a 5th grader in a singlet.
Not suitable for our airwaves. That's what that's called, Mark.
I asked him if we could get a picture, and I'm going to ask Yvette after the game if maybe we get one for the next broadcast. They weren't quite willing to give it up this time.
No.
I got to do a little recruiting on that.
You're good at that. You're good at that. But boy, what a job Brian Gregory did in his first year just to put a roster together.
Unbelievable. Mick Cronin said it. I don't even know how he put a competitive roster together.
10 first-year players with South Florida. He dragged them from all over the country to try and put this team together, and they were really competitive for a long stretch of this game, leading for 16 minutes of it. The building blocks are there to succeed.
And all these guys, Collins, the #1 building block, the freshman with the basketball up top, all these guys are having to play multiple and out of positions. You got Jiggets to come in, the transfer from Fairleigh Dickinson.
Open 3 for the freshman Justin Brown, doesn't go. 3-on-1 for the Bearcats. Cumberland makes him pay. Jaron Cumberland dials in his 4th 3 of the night.
That is such smart point guard play.
Foul called on the sophomore. Mick Cronin not happy.
Cumberland has been so hot. And Kane Broom understands what Mick Cronin wants. When one of our guys are hot, give them the basketball, says Mick.
He's leading all Cincinnati scorers tonight, the sophomore Jaron Cumberland. 16 points. Peyton Banks has 18 for South Florida. Those two have put on a clinic from deep. Both with 4 3-pointers tonight. Foul underneath.
Cincinnati foul number 24, Kyle Washington.
Kyle Washington tagged for that one. That's the senior's 3rd. So with about 8 minutes left in this game, Mark, if you're South Florida, you're down 14, you feel like you've played pretty well against the number 14 team in the country. How can you finish strong and try and build some momentum to take with you as they continue to battle a really tough American Conference schedule?
You keep grinding. You don't give up on your game plan. You keep executing. Little inside out right here.
Going to De Silva, double teamed. Collins fouled on the floor with Shea on the timer. Jaron Cumberland, he is feeling it tonight. In transition, 4 threes 16 points, and the Bearcats' largest lead of the game, 14. We welcome you back to Tampa, number 14, Cincinnati with a comfortable lead, 60-46 against South Florida. He's Mark Adams, I'm Jay Alter. Well, Mark, Mick Cronin, it's his second best start at 14-2 in his 12-year tenure, and a big reason why. He's got some depth on this roster.
You know, to be a pretty good team, you got to have one really good player. To be a better team, you got to have two really good players. To be a potential championship team, you need a third really good player. And Jaron Cumberland is that player, knocking down the three ball. And credit Cincinnati with recognizing that he was the hot hand. You know, and guys like Jacob Evans III and Gary Clark, they don't care. They just want to win. And Jaron Cumberland is making plays.
Great take by Tulio Da Silva, but it doesn't fall for the sophomore. Bearcats at 14-2, 7 straight wins after losses to Xavier and Florida. They're looking like a top 15, top 10 team in the country in this second half, Mark.
Cincinnati and Wichita State, they bring depth, they bring diversity, they bring star power, they bring defense, they bring rebounding. Those are two of the most special teams in America. Plain and simple. And they're going to meet come February.
You know, if you trust the BPI, 2 top 10 teams in the country in this conference.
And I know what I see with my eyeballs. You know
what do you call that? The Mark Adams eyeball test?
I guess so. And I've seen some good teams this year. I've seen North Carolina, really good team. I love Theo Pinson, the way he defends. Of course, Joel Berry, the way he can run an offense. Luke May, really good all-around basketball player. I saw Ohio State. Keita Bates-Diop, one of the most unsung heroes of this college basketball season. A tremendous season for Chris Holtmann.
Definitely has put himself into the Coach of the Year conversation with what he's done in his first year coming over from Butler.
I've seen Wichita State in person. I've seen Cincinnati in person. And there are some really good basketball teams around the country, and those two teams, Wichita State and Cincinnati, are as good as anybody, period.
Have to comment on the hustle of Peyton Banks. Misses a 3, gets his own rebound, and heads to the line for foul shots. Great hustle play.
He's another versatile offensive talent. Houston, mentally tough. Just below Wichita State and Cincinnati in the standings. UCF with Taco Fall, the 10-foot force field around the basket. If that team ever gets properly healthy, it's going to be tough to beat for Johnny Dawkins' bunch. Memphis starting to make a move now. Jeremiah Martin was unbelievable the other night against Tulane.
And boy, has South Florida played a lot better than 0-4. But you are what your record says you are.
That's exactly right. Just ask Temple at 1-5.
Great feed in the finish there. Gary Clark underneath for 2.
Temple went on the road and won at SMU earlier this week. Last second shot by Josh Brown. Thought they were going to right the ship. There's a lot of season to go, but a 1-5 hole, that's tough.
They have the Cincinnati team in a tie game at home late.
Yep.
Jacob Evans won it for the Bearcats, 55-53. Samuel
With 4/10
can't
of a
stick
second
it.
left. Knocked down a clutch shot.
Yeah, good enough to get him American Player of the Week after that winner.
That's what I like about Jacob Evans too. He's a big point guard.
6'6".
Yep.
There's that dynamic duo right there. Pick and roll action between Evans and Clark.
Really well-designed play.
5 to shoot for Kane Broom. Fires up a 3 and hits. That's exactly what Cincinnati needs out of the transfer from Sacred Heart.
And defensive ball pressure right here. That's where, if he can improve in this one area, take away dribble penetration, get some steals, Kane Broom will make Cincinnati elite.
First big Monday of the season on ESPN. It's a doubleheader Sonic blockbuster. Duke against Miami at 7 Eastern. And then, a must-see showdown. Big 12 matchup. Kansas going to Morgantown against West Virginia. And you know Bob Huggins and company going to be hungry after the loss today. Both games also available on the ESPN app. Kane Broome just knocked down the three. Transfer from Sacred Heart. That's out of the Northeast Conference. And the last time he played against South Florida's Stephon Jiggets, who's from Fairleigh Dickinson, guess what happened? Broome went for a career-high 39 points. So you're thinking Jiggets, man, that's got to be pretty terrible, another point guard. Guess what? Jiggets went for a career-high 27 points, and both of those performances still stand as their career highs today, nearly 2 years later.
Talked to Stephon before the game. He remembers that game well. He actually had a shot to tie or win that game and fell off the rim. These two guys matched up mano-a-mano now in the American.
Who would have thought? February 20th, 2016, they'd be seeing each other nearly 2 years later in a different conference on different teams.
And I'm sure the coaches at Sacred Heart and Fairleigh Dickinson didn't think that either.
That was a great, true. That was a great game, by the way.
Yeah.
91-88 contest that Sacred Heart won on the back of Broome's 39 points.
Substitution for Cincinnati, number 34, Jaron Cumberland. Number 4, Peyton Banks in the line for the Wolves. He'll shoot.
Peyton Banks leads all scorers with 20 points at the foul line. He's got a really smooth stroke.
He really does. He plays with a lot of offensive confidence. You can't speed him up. He really knows how to use screens and come off of screens.
Checking in for the Bulls, number 11, David Collins.
Both teams will step away from this game feeling good about themselves. Cincinnati roared back from a 10-point deficit, now comfortable with a 17-point lead. In South Florida, really challenged for a lot of this game, the number 14 team in the country.
And South Florida now trying to go a little bit of full court pressure to take Cincinnati out. Cincinnati very well prepared.
And come Monday, Cincinnati could very well be in the top 10.
Yep.
A couple of losses with teams in front of them this week. Don't be surprised if it's a single digit next to the Bearcats' name. Cumberland, beautiful step back, got it. Jaron Cumberland on fire tonight, 18 points.
You know, he has struggled with his confidence over about the last 2 or 3 weeks, but boy, is that confidence back. He is on fire tonight.
Made 4 of his last 5 shots. Feels like everything he chucks up finds the bottom of the hoop.
You know, Cincinnati defensively can switch off of so many screens because they got guys that can guard so many positions. That's the versatility again.
Jiggets on Broome, Northeast Conference reunion right there. Jiggets can't get it to go. And those two, you talked to them, they said they guarded each other in that game in 2016.
Jiggets talked about against Broome. They're matched up right now, number 0 in white versus 15 in black. You got to keep Kane Broome in front. If you let him get into gaps, he's going to make plays. There they are matched up. See if he can deny him the basket here.
Inside, the senior, as the shot clock was winding down, doesn't matter. Kyle Washington, beautiful hook shot.
Never any panic for Cincinnati as the shot clock ran down.
They've been really composed and in control in the second half.
Really after the first 10 minutes. They struggled in the first 10 minutes.
Peyton Banks thought that one was good. He was running back to play defense.
It looked dead on.
Well, the way he's been shooting tonight, 7 of 9 before that shot. .21 lead for the Bearcats. South Florida, 0 field goals in their last 7 minutes. The defense has been suffocating. Terrence Samuel in transition, 3-on-2, takes it himself, but can't get the finish. Oh no. He did everything but lay it in.
And that's what teams who lose games do, unfortunately. You know, South Florida's really played a good basketball game. But those are the types of mistakes that don't allow you to win games like this. You got to be perfect. You got to make every play, especially the simple ones.
How about Jacob Evans? Cincinnati flexing their top 15 muscles here in Tampa. What a performance from the Bearcats. Looking for their 8th straight win to go 4-0 in American League play. It has been all Cincinnati as of late, both sides of the ball.
ESPN's exclusive presentation of college basketball is presented by 5 Hour Energy Shots. Get back to 100%.
We got a good one, baby. Call your friends up. 4 teams, 2 conferences, 1 blockbuster night.
High-level college basketball here. What a fun night this is going to be.
Monday on ESPN.
Boy, did one of the best defenses in the country show up in Tampa tonight. Cincinnati suffocating South Florida, 24-point lead. Here's why.
The boa constrictor defense of Cincinnati started with about 10 minutes to go in the first half. Watch the black jerseys all work together. It's as if they are all connected in some way. That was a great defensive possession. They move together as a team. They play good wingspan defense. They get their hands on basketballs, and then all of a sudden you got a 6'9" guy that can take it all the way down as well and make plays. This is a team that suffocates you. They squeeze the life out of you.
Now there's a reason that they've got 7 straight wins. It's about to be 8. They've got depth, they've got defense, and they've got some veteran leadership as well with Gary Clark and Jacob Evans. You put all things together, so we get an and one from South Florida. Those are the type of attributes that you see in March with teams that make deep runs.
Yeah, there's been a lot of studies done about defensive field goal percentage and then the ability to win games in the NCAA tournament. That's why Cincinnati has gone to the NCAA tournament, but they haven't made the deep run yet. Now, they've been good enough defensively, but Jay, they've never been good enough offensively in my view until this year. They're good enough. They have enough weapons offensively.
Jaron Cumberland, one of them. He's got 18 points. Jacob Evans, the leading scorer, right behind with 16. It's been balanced scoring for Cincinnati tonight.
It's been balanced scoring for the year.
Right.
When you look at Jacob Evans and Gary Clark, they average a little bit over 13 and 12 points a game.
Some of the youth on the court right now for Mick Cronin. Freshman Trevor Moore flying to the basket there. Samuel coast to coast draws the foul. Sports Center tonight at 11 o'clock Eastern on ESPN. They'll have your full breakdown on Raptors and Warriors. And then, boy, oh boy, Oklahoma's Trae Young making more history in his freshman year against TCU. And then, of course, NFL playoffs, divisional rounds kicking off today. Eagles win, and Patriots and Titans tied at 7 right now.
How about Trae Young with 43? That game went into overtime, if memory serves. I'm switching around to a bunch of overtime games against TCU.
It did.
Making basket after basket, pass after pass. They couldn't deny him the basketball. He just kept getting the ball and making plays. I mean, Marvin Bagley III, we opened up the season thinking, he'll probably be player of the year. Then Trae Young comes along. We don't even hear about Bagley anymore.
No, meet Trae
Dude's
Young.
averaging 22 a game and 16. Don't even know he exists anymore. Well, we do.
You can see him on Big Monday against Miami. Sonic blockbuster. Under a minute to go here in Tampa. Great feed underneath. Keith Williams leaves it for Nasir Brooks. Williams, 2017 New York City Player of the Year. This kid can play, but it speaks to the depth of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
He's struggling for playtime.
Yeah. And you got to play defense at a certain level. And he's very capable. He could be develop into a lockdown defender.
And with 16 points tonight, Jacob Evans into the 1,000-point club. He's got some teammates that are already there. Beat him to it.
And all that experience is going to lend to a successful NCAA tournament run for the Cincinnati Bearcats. If a couple things happen, if Kane Broome continues to stay healthy and get better, and if this veteran team stays healthy, they're good enough.
Only a 2-second separation from the shot clock and the game clock. And Cincinnati, you just mentioned it, NCAA tournament. They've been there each of the last 7 seasons, only one of 8 teams to do it. A well-oiled machine for Mick Cronin. And boy, they look the part tonight.
And they're going to do it again. 2 teams on that list are in jeopardy of not making the NCAA tournament. And that would be VCU and Wisconsin. I feel pretty good about Duke and those guys.
Yeah, they should be just fine.
Yeah.
All right, there's your final score, 78-55 Cincinnati after a sluggish start. Put it into overdrive and gets the victory on the road against South Florida. 8-game winning streak for Mick Cronin and company. Biggest takeaway, Mark?
Kudos to Brian Gregory and South Florida. Stay the course. Cincinnati, the boa constrictor defense came up big in the last 30 minutes of this basketball game.
South Florida falls to 0-5 in league play. Cincinnati 78, Bulls 55 is our final score. Coming up next on ESPN News, it's E60 for Mark Adams and our entire crew saying so long from Tampa. I'm Jay Alter. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.